Welcome back to the Highway to Healing podcast, all about breaking the stigma of mental health in our community. Today, we are joined by our friends, Manny and Glecie, as we discuss the importance of including your partner on your own individual healing journey, as well as how do we heal as a couple. You ready? Let's jump in. Welcome back to the Highway to Healing podcast, where we are changing the narrative of healing and trauma in our community. Today, we have two very, very special guests, Manny and Glecie, and we're going to talk about how couples and how we go on our healing path together, as well as going on it individually. So let's jump right in and talk to Manny and Glecie. Welcome, guys. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, guys.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell listeners about you guys, your relationship.
So hello again, I'm Glecie. This is Manny. We've been together, it'll be 7 years in March now. So, during this time, especially 2020, I'd say that was a catalyst in my healing journey, our healing journey. So, learning about it together, because individually, everyone talks about their healing journey, but, it's not a conversation that you get to hear often of how to do that as a couple.
Mm-hmm. Right. Manny, talk to us.
How's it going? My name is Manny Nahara. I'm here calling in or doing this podcast from the Bay Area.
Yeah.
I guess since Glecie jumped into her healing journey with Reiki, I guess my version of healing is just tapping into my creative side, working with art. So that's pretty much, I guess, my version of healing, and we'll actually talk about that a little bit more, and how our healing journey is not only individually, how we heal ourselves, but also as a couple, and how we could support not only ourselves, but support each other through our healing.
Absolutely. So let's jump right into that. We've talked before. We know Glecie was on her journey of becoming a Reiki practitioner, and she's going through her path. Manny, I'm going to start with you. When she started going on this journey, what were your thoughts? Where were you at?
Yeah, so, it was, I guess my thoughts were, it was unfamiliar, right? Because I personally never heard of Reiki before, like probably many of your guys' listeners.
Mm-hmm.
I've personally never heard of Reiki, and she just approached me one day and said, "Hey, I'm actually taking a Reiki class," and I had no clue what it was, and she explained, it's about energy, your chakras, keeping them aligned. And I said, okay. I just nodded my head as if I understood, right?
Uh-huh.
And but 3-4 months in, as she's practicing this Reiki, I noticed that there was a change in her. I noticed that not only was she able to heal herself, she actually has the gift to help and heal others. So that really made me open my eyes to figure out not only how can I learn, not only is she learning how to heal herself, how can I heal myself and learn more about myself?
Right. And so, Glecie, as you're going on this path and this journey, right? Talk us through that for you. How did that work for you in terms of individually? We know about that piece, but in terms of your relationship, how was that working for you?
Yeah, well, it was definitely new territory because, like I said, everyone talks about their own individual journey and their healing journey. And as I was going about mine, I was starting to see that there was this gap between me and Manny, and me feeling like I've gotten to this place of healedness at a certain level. Meanwhile, I was questioning where he was at, and it got to a point where it was me feeling like I was going to outgrow him because he wasn't keeping up. And so, that was a whole nother argument / conversation in our relationship that we had never thought about.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult when you're on this healing journey and as an individual, but you still have a partner, you still have a partnership to think of. And it's how do you go about that in healing together, right? Because I'm healing myself, but well, what about him? Like for me, it was a lot of questioning, like, oh, what is he doing to heal himself? And, basically just, being afraid that if he wasn't doing anything, that I would essentially outgrow him. And that was definitely one of my fears and something that we don't hear about often. And so that's something we're, definitely trying to figure out right now. And just having conversations about, for sure. So.
Yeah. And also, I think it's key to point out that, you guys recently in 2020 moved in with each other, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's a huge step. And moving in with each other in a pandemic kind of leads to some of these conversations that we're forced to have, or, usually you'll be able to kind of do other things. Like while you were going through your journey of healing, Manny could have been doing more of his creative space outside or riding his bike or, things that he likes to do. But currently in the pandemic, there's a lot of stuff put on hold. So talk to us about like, how are you guys able to, one, support each other during that kind of hard time? And then how did that lead to the big conversation or the big frustration and argument about Manny's path?
Yeah, in terms of supporting each other, I think for me, I just make sure that I take a step back and give her her own space. So whatever she needs to do in terms of, attending events or wanting to learn more about Reiki, or, if she needs to work with more clients, obviously I just take a step back and making sure that she has enough space to practice her craft and be able to continue to help others without me interfering.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And just, taking a step back to make sure that she knows that she can still grow and she doesn't need, that there's no correlation in terms of me, that I shouldn't be able to hold her back from, letting her do the things that she wants to do in the healing space.
Absolutely. And then Glecie, for you, you said you were frustrated because you were moving up, you were growing, and you weren't seeing him grow in terms of what you wanted to see. Yeah. How did that, like, how did that even come about? How would that conversation come up? Talk to us about your thoughts on that, because that's deep, that's heavy, right?
Yeah. So I heard this quote, like, when you heal yourself, you heal whoever, your family, your friends. And so my thinking was that by me going through my healing journey, I was creating the space for Manny to be able to do so. Mm-hmm. But what I guess I didn't realize is that obviously we all heal at our own pace, and what that may look like for someone else is, can be totally different for another person. Yeah. And so that was the case for us, right? Like, I was at this level of healing and I didn't feel like he was like stepping up to that space. And like, in my eyes, him zoning out in front of the TV was him being lazy. And I would like encourage him all the time, like, why don't you go read a book? And like, even when I had started Reiki, I did a couple sessions on him to like practice or whatever, but I also felt like he wasn't receptive to it. So that especially was just like, well, like, what are you doing? Like, you're just coming home and like being lazy and not doing anything to better yourself. But little did I know that, he was essentially going opposite of me healing. And I don't know if you want to talk about that, since that's where you...
Yeah, it was weird timing, because the time where she was starting to go on her healing journey, I felt like I was going the opposite direction in terms of my mental space, my mental wellness, because of multiple factors, right? Because of one, this pandemic, right? I know it's definitely, it's different for a lot of people. It's changed a lot of people's lives, right? Not being able to go out, not being able to socialize, not being able to see friends or family. That was one. But two, also entrepreneurship burnout. Because of being in entrepreneurship, it definitely took a toll on my mental space. It definitely took a toll on how I viewed not only myself, but it also how I viewed my future. So it definitely changed my headspace.
Yeah.
And those two factors definitely led to me thinking, hey, she's going on her healing journey. Why do I feel this way where I'm going the opposite direction? Because like she said, my ways of coping were literally just coming home and sitting in front of the TV. And I realized during that time, I wasn't tapping into the things that I like doing, like for example, riding my bike with my cousins, or tapping into that creative space that I love doing.
Yeah.
I noticed during that time I was getting away from those things, and I felt like I was digging myself in a hole. So it was just crazy timing that I was going one direction and she was going another direction. Yeah.
I remember part of that, right? Because we were both in the entrepreneurship realm together. And then when you started going on those bike rides with your cousins, and how much happier you were to take that time, even away from the entrepreneurship, to go and spend time doing things that you love to do. I remember seeing how happy you were, and then not seeing you in the entrepreneurship area anymore. I didn't even know that you were going through that, right? But I mean, it really goes to show we don't know each other's journey so much, right? Even in the same house, during the pandemic where you're together pretty much 24/7, we don't know what the other person is going through, right? And I'm thinking, why aren't you on this journey with me? But taking a step back, realizing we're starting at different places. Like you're starting from, you have something else to heal that I didn't have to heal. So maybe I'm starting faster than you, or however it may be. But that brings in the communication, right? Because, we say we open up space, but are we making that aware for them too, right? Like, hey, like I'm opening up this space for you to have this conversation with me when you're ready, right? Not let's push this conversation, but hey, this space is open. When you're ready to have this conversation, we can have this conversation. We can figure out ways to get us all on this healing journey, not going fast or slow, or just going at our own pace. And like we talked about when we did the Reiki podcast, like everyone has their own medium as well. Manny has found his medium in his creative side and tapping back into his art, which is beautiful.
So Manny, talk to us about that piece, right? Like the communication in terms of, you're seeing this relationship go two different directions. She's going higher places with her healing. You're going down deeper into like your own feelings and stuff. And where did that put you in terms of how did you communicate that? If that was a conversation, and then how did you internalize that? Because that can be rough, where you see your partner doing all these great things, and now you're feeling like I'm doing the opposite, right? That can be rough for relationships. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so that conversation actually stemmed from an argument, essentially, right? She saw my habits. She saw what I was doing every day, the things that I was doing or weren't doing at all. So that eventually stemmed to an argument, which actually led to me taking a step into learning more about myself and realizing that I wanted to talk to a therapist. Obviously it was very uncomfortable for me. It was something that never crossed my mind until I realized that I had so much emotion that I could not control. And knowing myself, I don't get angry often. Yeah. So knowing that I had that uncontrollable anger and emotion, and having anxiety attacks or panic attacks throughout the day every so often, I realized it was a step that I needed to take for myself to not only better ourselves, because I knew if I didn't better myself, it would not better our relationship.
Yeah,
so
that's key.
Yeah,
it's really key. So then, how did that conversation come out? Because I know you said it came to an argument. So how Glecie, for you, how did this argument, because it seems like this is the catalyst here, how did this argument either come about, what stemmed, and where did we go? How do we grow from this argument as well?
Yeah. James touched on it, how, I was creating all this space in healing myself and hoping that he would step into that space. Mm-hmm. But because I never had the conversation with him, or we never had the conversation with each other that I was doing so, then, it was that void where it's like, well, when are you gonna, step into this space? And he was like, wait, what? Like, what are you talking about? And, obviously that's something we're working on, communicating rather than letting it build up internally and letting it explode, that kind of thing. And unfortunately, that was a catalyst to a lot of the breakthroughs in these conversations and in the next steps of our healing journeys together as a couple. But obviously it should not always be that way, right? Like, it's exhausting, it's tiring. Like, it should just be a conversation that happens, I guess, naturally. If I'm feeling a certain way, like, I should be able to communicate it or feel comfortable to communicate it freely.
Yeah, I think that's key, because in relationships, I know for myself, I've been married for 9 years, and there's still a lot of times where I cannot find the language or the words to express what I want to express to my wife. And I have to really take a step back and try and figure out, okay, how do I want to say this, right? And talking to everybody else, outside of a relationship, I can talk to them just whatever. It just comes out, word vomit.
Yeah.
Just da-da-da-da-da-da. But then when it's time to talk to my wife, it's kind of like, okay. And I think it's more so is that you care so much that you don't want to use the wrong things to kind of hurt their feelings or kind of create an argument. But in turn, what you're really doing, you're avoiding the conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so when we avoid that conversation, it only gets worse, because now my emotions only heighten, because now I'm just building up on this, and it's just sitting here, and I'm like, like for you, Gless, you're like, when are you going to step into this void? Like, when are you going to step into this space? And Manny's sitting here like, wait, I didn't know you wanted me to step into this space. Exactly. You're right. It's like having that open communication, right? And when you felt it in the beginning, would it kind of let Manny know where you're at with him in the relationship. And then Manny, so you talked about going and talking to a therapist, which I want to applaud you for, knowing that you needed to speak to someone and taking that step, and being very brave and taking that step to go talk to someone. How did that conversation come up with Glecie, that you were talking to a therapist or seeing a therapist?
Yeah, it was a conversation that I was trying to prolong, right? Because there's a stigma around therapists in general, right? Saying like, oh, if you talk to a therapist, then you're not well.
Yeah.
But that's not always the case, right? Like, maybe you just need someone to talk to, tell them about how your day is going, express your emotions. That way you can just be able to release any emotions that you have, right? So it was different for me, right? So it was a conversation that was prolonging, that I wanted to tell her. But eventually I did tell her and said, hey, you know what? Like, I know I need this for me. And of course, the first thing that came to my mind was, please don't judge me, right? Because that's what a lot of people feel. Like, will others judge me because I am seeing a therapist, right? Because, like I said, stigma with therapy is that, there's something wrong with you, right? But so I came to realize, I need to tell her, because it's my version of healing myself, and I know that it's going to help me in the long run. So eventually I told her. It was a conversation we had, and of course that conversation went completely opposite of what I was playing in my mind, right?
Yeah.
I thought she was gonna say, oh, why? You don't need one. Those were the kind of things that were going in my mind. But to her, it was, I'm glad that you are, because we both knew that I needed to take that step to talk to somebody else, just to be able to release all those emotions.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
think,
And I think it's, go ahead, James.
I think the key, especially when we're stepping into a healing space, is to realize that we're also stepping into vulnerability, right?
Yeah.
So everything is heightened at this point. We're now shedding off our wall and our armor to say, "Oh, I need healing. I need this."
Yeah.
So it heightens our sensitivity for even with our partner, or it could be our family when they're saying things to us. We might be a little extra sensitive because we've taken down some walls that we've built up over time. So that communication part is heightened. And like you said, Manny, like we're already anticipating what the other person's going to say or how they're going to
Yeah.
respond to what we're going to bring to the table or how they're going to respond to our actions, right? Like if I'm stepping away, like Glecie, if I'm stepping away from the TV to read a book, you should understand that means we need to read more books. Come on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
So we're
Right.
stepping into this, but we have to realize that not everyone is cognizant of what we're doing as well. So that communication piece is key right now. I actually want to talk more about the space that you were creating, Manny, that you felt like you were creating space for Glecie to grow by giving her space to go in the room or wherever to go on her calls for healing. I want to talk about that piece because at the time you felt like you were being the most supportive boyfriend at the time, right? Where Glecie, on the other hand, was like, come on with me, right? So I want to talk about that kind of disconnect or where you both thought you could help each other.
Yeah, I think definitely the disconnect was that Glecie thought that by her pushing herself to heal and helping others and healing others, that it would force me to heal myself as well.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of support, like I mentioned earlier, just by giving her own space. But I think that led to more of an understanding between us that everyone heals differently, that everyone heals at their own different pace, and everyone heals just differently. You can't compare your journey to someone else's, especially your healing journey, because you can't compare your traumas, you can't compare your past, you can't compare the things you're triggered by, right? Because maybe something that I'm triggered by is completely different from what triggers her. Yeah. So I think in terms of support, I had to understand that we're both healing at a different pace, even though I know she's way more ahead of me because of the initiative she took to jump into the healing space.
Mm-hmm. And now, Gless, how do you also support Manny, knowing that maybe he's a little behind on his healing journey or however, right? Now that you guys have come and had this conversation, this blow up that turned into a conversation, and now you're creating this space to also help Manny, like, what are you doing to help Manny on his journey as well?
I feel like to help Manny, it's to work on myself. Because like I said, like I was thinking that he wasn't doing this or that, but reminding myself that, like he said, that we're all on our own. We heal at a different pace. And that.
Like, what are you doing to support Manny's healing journey? Right? Because as a partner, as a partnership, we bring out the best in each other, hopefully, right? So we are propelling, especially in this healing space, we want to help uplift each other. That's throughout the community, whether it's friends, significant others, we want to help uplift each other. What are you guys currently doing in your household? And it could be just that, right? I'm currently working on myself because a big thing for me with my partner is I need to work on my patience, and that'll help our relationship, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not something necessarily I need to help her with. It's something I need to internalize and help myself, become more patient, become, more communicative, right? In order for me to help her have that open space for her to talk to me, right? Because if I'm losing my patience with her, which is my case, right? I lose my patience with her, then she doesn't feel like there's space for her to communicate with me. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the thing that I've been doing is working on my patience and listening and internalizing my stuff, my shit, so that I can open up that space for her. So I'm just saying, what are you guys currently doing, acting in your household to get that same result?
Yeah, I would say that it's also me working on myself, because, Manny has a lot more patience than I do. And so it's me practicing that. And again, keeping in mind that we're all healing at different rates. We all have our own different things to heal. And that, dude, I don't know why I cannot answer this question.
Well, I think it's,
Should
I think it's
end
because,
it at that?
No, we can stay there. I think it's because you had to get there, right? Because in the beginning, you were trying to expedite his process.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what kind of was like, come on, you're trying to push him. And that led to, our infamous YouTube conversation. Right. And so maybe you're talking from that piece of like, how did that conversation and that situation now helps you understand, okay, I need to support him differently?
I think the ways that she's personally supported me is that she's starting to understand that I'm healing differently from her, mm-hmm. that we are healing at a different pace, and understanding that communication is key now in our relationship, and not only specifically about our relationship, but specifically about healing and what our breakthroughs are and what triggers us and what bothers us, right? Yeah. For example, you mentioned it earlier, Jay, but we another catalyst to our breakthrough was another argument we had where she's tried to subliminally play a YouTube video and tell me,
sneak this.
Yeah, exactly, right? She it was something about a video about personal growth, right? How you're the Capricorn, which I am. The Capricorn must step into their growth. They must take initiative. They must be able to shed their old skin, right? Like, and of course, she was looking at side eyeing me and saying, "Well, are you doing that? Are you doing this? Did you hear that? Did you hear this?" Right? And of course, me being confused, like I thought we were just watching a YouTube video, and that basically stemmed to a conversation like, "Hey, like I want to let you know that I am growing, I am healing." I am taking the steps, right? I am taking the steps to healing myself, but I just may not be going at the pace that you are. So I want you to understand that I am moving forward, but maybe it's not at the pace that you think I am, but I want you to know that I am healing. So that stemmed to another conversation of we should talk about when we're healing. We should talk about, hey, I am doing better today. Hey, my emotions are this and that. Hey, this is actually what triggered me today.
Yeah.
Right. And small things like that, just those small conversations throughout the day can definitely better a relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Having that open space where you feel comfortable to share those things without feeling that judgment, like you said earlier. So that's key.
Yeah, and it doesn't happen overnight, right?
No,
just
it's
like
a
our
progress,
healing
right?
It doesn't happen overnight. So when we're working on anything,
definitely not.
Even if it's within a couple or within ourselves, just don't expect results right away, but still work towards that end goal that we're both looking for.
For sure. I think that was actually verbatim. I think that's what I told her. I was like, hey, you can't expect me to heal overnight. It's a journey for me as well, just like it's a journey for you. So, basically what I said is just bear with me because I am healing also. And just, it's a journey. It's not it doesn't happen with a snap of a finger. So.
Absolutely. Another question I have for you guys in terms of now you guys are both on your separate individual healing journeys, right? And now you guys are starting to communicate and learn how to fuse that and bring that together to heal as a couple. How do you also deal with the healing piece with everything else that's going on, professionally, financially, leisure? How do you guys kind of learn how to fit that all together now?
They're still trying to figure that out.
They're like, yeah, Jay, I'm sorry. We're working on it.
Yeah, I think that's the best answer, right? To say that we're working on it. We're still trying to understand that. I think we learn new things about our relationship and in that realm every single day.
Yeah,
right? Like
absolutely.
I think that's ask us in a podcast 15, 20 episodes from now, and maybe we'll give you an answer.
I want to add on to that, or finding healing things we can do together. Whether that is going for a walk or a hike, that's one way that I find to ground and release. And he usually doesn't have any problem with it because, we're just going out for a walk. And so, and during these walks, we have these conversations. And then now he's been more open to doing these virtual sound baths. And, I ask him hey, do you want to join me? And so he'll say, yeah. So just finding healing things that we can do together.
Yeah.
Whether that is physically outside or in the home. Yeah.
One thing we're actually planning to do is a wine and paint night together. So hopefully that'll happen soon.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely key when you talk about healing as a couple, is finding things, even if you are on your individual journey and your mediums are different, finding some things in common that you guys can do. To be it's just a walk outside maybe for one person, but for another person, it's, I'm becoming one with nature and I'm taking in all the energy here, right? But you're both enjoying it. So finding things that you guys can enjoy together along this healing journey is very important, because those separations do happen, and it happens in any atmosphere that you talk about, really. Like we talked about entrepreneurship earlier. We had those conversations in entrepreneurship, right? Like if I'm growing, I'm entrepreneur, and my spouse is working the 9 to 5, then there could be some separation there, right? So it's the same in healing. So finding those things we can do together where we can incorporate each other, it's key. So I appreciate that, and I'm sure our healing community here can take some notes here as well, especially if they're in a relationship.
Yeah.
Jay?
Oh, I thought you were still going. I thought you in a good space right there. My fault, brother. So I think what you guys have done so far in helping us just kind of formulate just that whole encompassing relationships and then on that healing journey is really been helpful. Because there's a lot of us who go through the same thing where we don't know how to communicate, and we try to learn how to communicate best to our partner and try and give them that space and hold space. And I think you guys are in that phase where you're learning that as you go, and being a new couple living together, that does put a different strain. And so it's commendable to see the progress you guys are talking about right now with each other. In such a short time. I've been married for 9 years, so I'm still learning something about my wife every day, and she's still learning things about me every day, because we're always evolving. So I think it's real key that when we create that space to communicate and be open without feeling that judgment, it's going to help everybody. So I want to ask you guys, what kind of advice would you have for other couples who are trying to do the same, who are trying to build what you're currently building and working on?
Patience. Having patience with yourself as an individual, as well as together as a couple. And having that open communication if you feel like there is a disconnect, because that was a situation for us where I was me feeling like I was at this level, and because we didn't communicate that he was, going well in the opposite direction, and that, when I was up to a certain point of like losing my patience, like it was me blowing up and him, spiraling into his emotions as well. And then, so just, having that open communication, and meeting each other where you're at, is the biggest part that, because like we talked about earlier, as with anything, it doesn't happen overnight. I started my healing journey before he did. So, having patience with that.
Yeah. So advice for couples who are wanting to, or at least learning how to jump into the healing space together. First and foremost, I would say is that you want to learn more about yourself, right? The more you learn about yourself, learn more about your emotions, your traumas, and heal yourself, I think your relationship with your significant other will be stronger. That's one. But two, also, and Glecie definitely emphasized it, was that patience and communication. I think these two things go hand in hand with healing, right? Because patience in terms of you have to know that you guys are healing at a different pace and that you shouldn't rush one another, and know that you guys both have the same end goal, but you just might not get there at the same time. And in terms of communication, just communicating about your healing, talking about, what triggers you, what, how your day is going, communicating of, hey, this is a breakthrough that I went through. Yeah. Hey, this is an emotion that I felt today that I've never felt before. Yeah. And just talking about those things, I think those things will definitely not only strengthen your healing, but will strengthen the relationship between the two.
And then I also want to add that don't be afraid to seek outside help. Because obviously, you can only fix a relationship at the level that you understood before. But once you guys have both like reached this new level of learning and healing, sometimes you do need the outside help. Or just like or even when you haven't reached that level of healing yet, that it's okay to seek outside help, whether individually or you both individually, and then even together as a couple, like whether that's couples therapy or individual therapy. But then also coming and bringing it together again at the end of the day, and you both discussing what you both individually experienced. That way there's an understanding in the partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you guys for that, because I think, our experiences are from our perspective. And in order to gain perspective as a couple, you definitely need to be able to share what you guys are experiencing, because like you said, I could be experiencing this differently than my partner. And so it's key for me to openly share, what did I get from this experience? Okay, what did you get from this experience? And now we can come together and see where we're currently at in terms of where our mindset was with this, or just what our emotions are. And we can help have that conversation if we're like completely on different ends, right? So it just helps open that dialogue and building together as a couple and as a union. So absolutely, I think that's really great information and advice for anyone out there and our listeners.
Yeah, and this was a great one, but I can't wait for, like Manny said, the 10, 12 episodes deep when, it's not so fresh, because, a lot of those conversations that you guys had were only a couple weeks ago. So I'm looking forward to seeing how far we progress from here and what steps you guys took. So definitely looking forward to having you guys on another podcast with us. But before then, let the people know where they can find you. Gless?
Yes, on Instagram, I can be found at In Her Healings. I have links there to book any Reiki energy healing sessions with me, or I'm even open to just having conversation, reach out, DM.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to me to my personal page. It's at MNVJERA. Feel free to reach out to me as well. Also, you could check out my creative stuff that I've been working on. Like I mentioned earlier, it's definitely been a way for me to heal and to cope through this pandemic and healing myself by tapping into my creative side. So follow me at Made by Manny N. And yeah, hopefully we'll be able to talk to some of you guys and some of Highway Healing followers and be able to start a conversation with you guys and how we could support each other through this tough time.
Yes, it is a community.
Absolutely. Yes. Building that community.
Yes.
And you guys know where to find us as well. It's at the Highway to the number 2 Healing on Instagram, the Highway to Healing podcast. So thank you guys once again to our wonderful guests here, Manny and Glecie. Thank you for my co-host, Mr. Parker, for setting this up. And appreciate it. And we'll see you guys next time on the Highway to Healing podcast. Thank you for listening to the Highway to Healing podcast with your host, James Parker, and myself, Jay Tobe. We really hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, please follow us on Instagram at the Highway, the number 2 Healing, as well as follow us on YouTube, the Highway to Healing podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify. Do what you do, like, subscribe, share with your friends and family, and we really appreciate it. Let's build this community together.